Hi, this is David Marshall for Art of the Comic Book, and today we are going to learn lettering basics with ink. So the first thing you want to do is use a calligraphy ink. I prefer the Kali brand just because it's a little thinner and yet just as solid as traditional drawing India ink. So a couple of good practices things to keep in mind. One is that you always use fresh ink when you're lettering. Secondly, what you want to do is use a secondary jar like the empty one I just showed, and you want to fill it with just enough ink to cover the height of the nib, no more than that. So I've got my nib in this jar, and I'll tilt this for the sake of the camera. I don't want to fill it any higher than that. And so effectively just dipping the nib in this jar is putting ink in it for you to use. You don't have to do anything extra. So I'm filling up. Like so. And as you can see, that is just enough for the nib. So now that I do that, I am going to tilt this camera because I like to draw at a super vertical angle, but when it comes to inking, I have to work kind of flat. This is like years of trial and error, and I've gotten tired of fighting gravity. So here's a sheet that I've already preset with Ames guides to the traditional 3x5 2/3 scale. That's industry standard for North American comic books. We'll be experimenting with other settings as we go along, but for now, this is my freshly honed nib, my Hunt 107. And we're going to start just by doing a couple silly little strokes just to see if my honing technique actually worked. So dip. Oh, and another veteran trick is when you pull the ink away from the bowl or away from the bottle, is to wipe the ends of it. So old school people just used their finger, which is why a lot of my friends have essentially tattoos on their non-drawing index fingers because they've been doing this for 30 years. I like to use a cloth, same purpose. So dip in the ink, rub the sides, you're good to go. So I'm going to begin just by making some random strokes. And right now, I'm happy with most of this so far. The next is playing around with the infinity symbol. And again, I'm looking for catches. Basically, you want to use scrap paper wherever you can to not experiment or make guesses on your work. So, okay, those are my randoms. Left to right, right to left. It's catching a little bit. So when it catches, one of my ergonomic bad habits is to rotate the pen like this. I don't know where that urge comes from, but whenever I keep it straight, things work out well. So sometimes you have to fight against your own instincts. So again, left to right, right to left, up, down. All right, I think we're good. Now, as part of lettering practice, every time I'm lettering, I do the alphabet. So here we go again. And because I've been doing this for a while, I am now at a point where I try to be a little adventurous and do some things that I haven't done a million times. And at the same time, I fully realize that because I've only been hand lettering for about a decade, that is nowhere near as much muscle memory as people who've been doing it for 3 decades. Most of my hand lettering legendary friends, Tom Orzechowski, Todd Klein, Clem Robbins, they moved on to fonts based on their own handwriting. And every once in a while, they get a job where they have to hand letter. They usually have to spend hours tearing their houses apart trying to find their old Ames guides. But when they do, they're quite happy and they wish that the industry could go back to it. LMNOPQR. Oops. And if you haven't done this in a while, if you're doing this for the first time, it wouldn't hurt to do like repeat letters just to figure out what your S and your R and your A would look like. One of the conventions I picked up is a square bottom on the U. UV. But every little variation, the more you put into it, the more your personality comes out. TUV. X, Y, and Z. Now again, this probably looked easier than it was, but that's because I've been doing this for a while. And I'm always trying to push. For instance, when you do a number 2, it could be like that. It could be like that. 3s can have a flat top or not. Let's see. 4s can either be completely closed. Some letterers like to have an open. 5s aren't that different. 6s are pretty easy. 7, only the real pretentious people do that. I mean, unless you're lettering something in French. 8s are tough, but only when I try to do everything at once. When I stop there and then close up from the upper right, it looks fine. 9s tend to take anticipation. And there you go. You'll know if your line is too thick when you can't close letters that need space between strokes, like E. Let's see, what else? S. S is a good one. And when you put your A horizontal stem at a spot where it's either too low so it looks like a triangle or too high so that there's no hole. So basically all you need to do is practice, 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 practice. Oh, and one other thing. If you decide to embrace the old school method of using the different pen for the bolds and you want to keep them both wet, that's the beauty of that technique of using the inkwell with just a little bit of ink in it. Because both nibs, oops, wrong one. Both nibs can soak comfortably without getting ruined. And you just take one out and let the other one just soak in the ink. So now I'm going to do some bold. I won't do the whole alphabet again. Oh, look at that. And basically, I didn't play with this at first, and that's a bad habit. So if this were my real art, I'd be kind of messed up now. So what you should do always is just play. And one thing I forgot to do is wipe the sides. Oops, let's try that again. First thing you do, dip, wipe the sides, try again, see if that makes a difference. And I think it made a difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and try bold type again. And again, not the whole alphabet. And then you're gonna have to make the call whether it's too thick or just right. I'm thinking this is borderline, and maybe I need a new nib, but I'm gonna play this out and just see what happens. And I said I wasn't gonna do the whole alphabet, but the perfectionist in me wants to see how far this goes. Oh yeah, G's, that's another tough one. So yeah, that looks legible. And I'm not feeling any drag or any digging. And with the bold with the bold strokes, it's perfectly acceptable to go over your Ames guides a little bit. And there's a normal eye, crossbar eye. Oops. Ending of that one got a little sloppy. All right, this is getting better. Yeah, L. See, I can talk and I can do the alphabet. I just can't do both at the same time. Yeah, all right. I just needed to do some more work with this before. So now I think this one is ready. Lemon P, Q. And you notice these bold letters take much more horizontal space. That is okay. That's part of the beauty. All right, and I'll stop there. And if I wanted to pick up with let's say I was working on a word balloon with mixed, then I would go something like, hey. Put that away. Pick up the 107. And I fell out of the habit. I should have wiped the edges off. So you got to get in that habit. All right, swap out. All right, I'll just finish that silly little example off, and then that'll be enough for this lettering nib stuff. All right, this is getting really sloppy, so I'm hoping your work is better, particularly if you're doing demos. All right, this sentence is going to make no sense, but I have to close it out. All right. And that is how you use your nibs. And that is good inking, lettering practice. Thank you much for your time and see you next time. Bye.